Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Titletown South Florida, the Miami Herald's high school sports show. I'm Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Herald, joined once again by my wingman on this show, David Wilson. We're going to go over some of the latest happenings in the high school sports world. It's basketball championship season right now. David just got back from Lakeland. I'm headed up there myself. David covered the girls' tournament this past week. I'm going to go up for the boys. And we're going to talk a little bit with our good buddy Larry Blustein about football. And we're in the off season right now, but that doesn't mean it all shuts down. We got a lot going on in the off season camps, 7-on-7 tournaments, getting closer to spring football. David, from the high school spring football, we're about 2 months away. I know UM is about to get started.
UM kicks off this weekend. I think I saw some schools started this past weekend across the country.
It never stops for football. So.
Yeah, no, we are right back at it.
Right back at it. And we'll salute some of the top performances around town from the past week in different sports, as we always do. Our Player of the Week polls are open on MiamiHerald.com. Please vote. Vote as many times as you want. It's not behind the paywall. We had a lot of good kids, a lot of good performances this week as well, like usual. And so to get right to it, remember also, if you're watching this show, we have it on YouTube, and it's available as well as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, all the different platforms. If you're listening to this and you're not able to actually watch the show, obviously we're going to have some of the highlights that you're only going to be able to see if you watch the show, but a lot of good topics, a lot of good discussion on the podcast as well. So let's get right to it, David. And we're going to jump in on the girls basketball state tournament. We had 6 teams up there in Lakeland last week. Unfortunately for them, though, only 2 of them were able to come home with state championships. And those were Miami Country Day in Class 3A, St. Thomas Aquinas in Class 6A. Tell us a little bit about that, David, and we'll get into Country Day first. The Spartans lost their hold on Class 3A last year thanks to Westminster Academy, but I was there the other day at the regional final. They dominated Westminster, and it looks like they carried that right up to Lakeland. And you got a chance to see those 2 games. What do you think? The Spartans back on top?
Yeah, Country Day and St. Thomas, kind of like the two most emphatic runs through the Final Four over the weekend. I think St. Thomas finished with the highest combined margin of victory. But starting with Country Day, was last year was the first year I hadn't covered the girls tournament in a while, so it felt like to me it felt like Miami Country Day never left because they picked up right where they left off. Even doing it without Kayla Nelms, their leading scorer this year. She got hurt about a month earlier, right before kind of the postseason got started. They had to change their identity a little bit, and it still worked for them. They had, they got one of the best point guards in South Florida, which helped Christina Godfrey, who's heading to FAU. She scored 20 in the championship game. And, if you look at her stats in the year, she was averaging like 8 a game in the regular season. It's just how they were built with Nelms as I think she was up at 17, 18 points a game. They had to change their identity a lot, and Godfrey goes off for 20 in the title game. Obviously when you win 8 championships in a 10-year run, it's, Country Day at this point is, they're always one of the most talented rosters in the state, but it's like a reminder of like just how kind of good of a program and well coached they are also, that they're able to lose their best player and not just survive, but like you said, they kind of dominated their way through the whole postseason.
Well, Christina Godfrey was a big reason for that. So let's hear from her. Let's hear what she had to say about the win.
Run going into halftime, you guys were able to get some cushion on them. Kind of talk about that period in time. How important was that?
With our team, I think we've been in a lot of games where it's like a game of runs, and I think like in the last couple of games we've been able to overcome that, and we were like advantageous on our side of the runs. And I think that we I kind of just took over, just knowing that I needed to be a leader in this moment, and just took over.
That was right after I think Jalen got her second foul and had to come out too.
Yeah.
Was that you kind of knew there's not a lot of scoring?
I knew I was gonna have to do something once Jade was getting into foul trouble. So I kind of just took over, trusted my left hand, worked out well.
They got it down to 10, and then it seemed like you got into that mode again. It's like you guys got it by 19, and then once it got to 10, it seemed like you were like, okay, it's time to take over again. Yeah. Is that what kind of happened there towards the end of the third?
I told him at halftime, I told him I'm not losing this game, and that kind of stuck with me, and point to the end.
Yeah, and then Godfrey, great, and not alone too, because they got contributions from a few different players, like you were saying. Jalen Belton, I know, is one kid we're going to hear a lot from for the next few years. 8th grader.
She'll be the next one carrying. Nelms will be back next year. She was only a junior. Didn't play, but they'll be right back in the mix next year, even though they lose their starting point guard.
And I think something lost in this is the job that Okil Swaby and his staff really do there, because they, you look at their roster and it's like 7th, 8th graders, and they're playing high level basketball. And a lot of that is skill that they have, just talent, but also the practices, the hard work that they put in. So let's hear from Coach. You talked to Coach Swaby also up in Lakeland. Let's hear his thoughts.
It's obviously 8 of these now for you guys. Every team's different. What are you going to think about when you think about this team? What made this team special?
Honestly, I don't think I believed. Like when Kayla got hurt, I went through for about a week or so, maybe even 2, where I was like, we were searching for an identity, because Kayla was about 40% of our offense. And so when you look at our stats, she averaged about almost 20, but then nobody else averaged 8. So I'm thinking to myself, where in the world are we going to get any offense from in these games that are tough games? I did not know that defensively we'd be able to play the kind of defense we played. So it wasn't like back then I was sitting there thinking, oh, we got to play better defense. Well, we played decent defense, but we hadn't been great all year. So I was really concerned. And I really didn't start believing until the regional semifinals game was when I actually said, man, this team could actually probably win the state championship. We won that game by about 30 against a team that was playing pretty well. And I was like, okay, maybe if I coach a little bit better, we could win. So then I decided to start trying to coach a little bit better.
So Miami Country Day, like you said, 8 championships and counting. Another team that we thought wasn't going to be stopped was American Heritage. That was a bit of a shocker. And just how I saw these long, prolonged droughts for them. Just what happened against Mainland?
Yeah, I mean, Mainland's a pretty talented team. I think, American Heritage, they were pretty open about how at the start of the year, they lose to Nialatson, we've talked about a couple of times on this show, who already is, I think, top 10 in the country in scoring as a freshman at Florida State. So that was obviously a huge loss. And they had to pivot, right? They had to go from being a team that really leaned on one go-to scorer to being a team that spread it around a little bit more. And their best player is Jasleen Green, a freshman, who is, pretty good in the championship game, but you could feel that just kind of a little bit of a lack of a go-to option. Obviously they have good players across the board, but no one at that level. And when your top scorers are freshmen, it can be a little bit tougher. And then it kind of started, it's hard to shoot up there in Lakeland. Everyone talks about it. It's a big open gym, kind of like the Carrier Dome, wide, the wall's not right up against the hoop like it is in a high school gym. So it can screw with depth perception. And they missed a bunch of threes in the second quarter, which is where, the third quarter, which is where it really kind of unraveled for them. Down 20 going to the fourth. They got it down to a point in the last second, but couldn't complete that comeback.
Yeah, it's definitely not as big as the Carrier Dome, but it might
feel
as big. Yeah. It might feel
well, when you're coming away from a high school gym to it's a convention center basically. There's an arena in there, but it's not just a basketball arena. The G League team plays there. Yeah, the Magic plays there. Right. Yeah.
So you go to that setting, and that's why it's so important for some of these teams to get out there and play a lot of this competition from around the country, because you might see bigger venues, you might see a little bit, not in your little box where you're used to just shooting lights out all the time. But that bit Heritage, unfortunately, but I have a feeling the Patriots will be back. They'll start up a new streak at some point soon. A few teams also that got up there but weren't able to do it, but props to them for getting there, especially Miami High. I mean, Miami High has been a consistent team. They haven't been able to get it done as far as winning the championship, but I mean, tall obstacle, no pun intended, with Dr. Phillips, and they battled them. They held them to 40 points, had a chance to get it, but just didn't have enough offense there in that one. And Cardinal Gibbons in a similar situation with Bishop Kenny, just a little bit too much, but again, a program that got back there this year. And a surprise team, David, was Horeb Christian that we talked about before. Emily Rodriguez, the newcomer that came over from the Dominican, really had a tremendous year.
Yeah.
Basically dominant. You know, if they can get a little bit more around her, I know that was the failing in the championship game. The shooting just vanished. They went like, what was it? 1 for 13, I think, from 3 in that game. You know, so that's the thing. Teams are going to key on her. So if they can get a couple more pieces around her, maybe next year they can take that last leap and get the first championship. But a heck of a season for them to get as far as they did for the first time, and only really started up the program again recently, from what I read.
2020. They were they existed. School's been around since. I mean, it was a school I frankly like never really heard of. It's a small private school in Hialeah. Started up. It's been around since the 80s. They had sports kind of up until 2010-ish. Maybe they had other sports that haven't covered them in, but had girls basketball up until about 2010. Program, I think it's kind of stopped and started back for good in 2020. Played as an independent the last couple of years, and then this year, kind of come out of nowhere. Obviously, Coach Agustin Pelaez comes over from Mater Lakes, which has been a good program. Obviously, getting Emily Rodriguez from the Dominican Republic helps. But yeah, I mean, the reason they got to the title game in the first quarter of their semifinal game, Emily Rodriguez didn't score. They hit a bunch of threes, let them build an early lead, and then Rodriguez could kind of help them hang on as we got to the finish line. And yeah, the shots just weren't falling in the title game. And as you said, it can be, and as we talked about it, the RP Funding Center can be a tough place to shoot the basketball.
Small private school in Hialeah. Why does that sound familiar? Maybe they, a team can win 4 state championships in football or something like that. Oh well, rest in peace, Champagnat. Anyway, we're moving on to St. Thomas, which that's the other team that did triumph, and really we're talking about teams that put together championship runs. Yeah. 3 in a row now for the Raiders, and they don't look like they're going to be stopped anytime soon. I mean, they're in a tough class because Ely
so that's the thing. I mean, they played their title game in some ways in the region championship game against Ely, where they rallied from 18 down. And now it's 4 years in a row. Obviously, St. Thomas Aquinas the last 3 years, but the year before their run started, Ely won the state title. So that game has determined the state champion in each of the last 4 years.
Yeah, Karina Gordon was one of the big factors in this championship victory for them. Let's see what she had to say after the win.
Very special since freshman year I've been here, but we didn't win freshman year, and then my sophomore year, junior year, obviously senior year, we just won it. I've been a part of something special, and me and Randa can say that we created history, and they're gonna keep winning next year and the years after that.
Yeah, and the Raiders, like you said, I mean, Ely's going to be there, Dillard's there, South Broward's there. So I mean, if they can the region is always going to be the issue, but if they can break through there, sky's the limit as far as how many titles they can get in a row. But we're going to leave the basketball court now for a little bit. We'll come back when we do our state boys hoops preview a little bit later in the show. But first, a football chat with our old friend Larry Blustein, talking a little bit about what's caught his eye this offseason so far as we get a little bit closer to spring football. And we are here with our good friend Larry Blustein, as mentioned before, talk a little off-season football, what kind of the happenings have been of late. We're in a little bit of a slow time now in the off-season, but it doesn't slow down in terms of like camps, 7-on-7s, you name it. And Larry's out there all the time scouting who's worth seeing, who's got a shot, and helping kids out as he always does. And like always, my friend, good to see you. Glad you're doing well, and thanks for joining us on the show.
Oh, anytime. And I kind of like cringe just now when you said there was nothing going on, and I'm thinking, whoa,
not nothing going on, but no, it's not the season, but
I understand. Yeah. This is the busiest time of year for me because of the fact that I go to a lot of different events, whether it's the combines that we run or some of the camps or also, Under Armour's coming up, Nike, some of the rivals. And so it is a time of year. It kind of gets redundant because you see a lot of the same kids, so I can understand. But at the same time, this is kind of a busy time of year.
Yeah, you had yours a few weeks ago. I was there, a good event that you had over 100 kids for the at Ives Estates, the South Florida Combine that you run. We highlighted a few weeks ago on the show a few of the quarterbacks that were there, including Alexander over at Miramar and a few others. But who else if you talk about some of those kids that were there, Larry, what'd you think? Who's kind of jumped out at you?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, that type of combine is something that really gets the kids ready for bigger combines. It teaches them, a lot, the things going on. I mean, we kind of broke everything down. You had mentioned the quarterbacks that were there, and obviously you guys touched Joe, some of the others like Kale Alexander and the Kamani Corbett kid, who's a young guy, is probably the heir apparent at Homestead. In another year, and he'll get some work this year. I mean, we talked about Devin Gonzalez, who is kind of entrenched in Cypress Bay. Also a kid that you guys touched on and didn't really get a lot of ink is Jamal Higgins, the quarterback at Dr. Crop. Very good athlete as well. I mean, you had Aiden Karsh from last year, a young kid, last year. Now he's going to be a senior this year from Monsignor Pace. It was good to see a lot of the kids that came back. I mean, Luke Warnock, who is not in our area, but he was at Cardinal. He's at Cardinal Newman now. He was at Cardinal Gibbons before. So, I mean, you had a chance to see some really, really good quarterbacks. I mean, I was impressed also by some of the defensive kids. The King Williams kid out of Fort Lauderdale, who is he's a 2023 kid, but that's the one thing too. We got a lot of the kids who are seniors in there. Jaden Atkinson from Miramar was another name that that we went. And I'll tell you a guy. And even though he plays at Cardinal Gibbons at Fort Lauderdale, his dad made a name for himself at Miami Edison as a running back. Hans Ottenott. Well, his son Anthony is a big-time linebacker, and Hans is he's a lawyer now, but he had really, really good grades, and back when he was in high school, and a really good guy, a kind of his kid's going to be a beast. He's a 2025 kid. A kid that I think this year kind of comes alive a little bit. I thought one of the most impressive player there is a two-way kid. He's out of Cypress Bay. A lot of people didn't hear about him this year. Joaquin Eddy, wide receiver, defensive back, good in the classroom. I think he's going to be somebody that really picks up a lot of steam this year. Another kid that I thought was really, really good is Logan Andrews out of Cardinal Gibbons. He's a 2025 receiver. He's got size, great bloodlines. His mom was a great softball player at FAU and also Hollywood Hills. His sister's on the volleyball team at the University of Miami now. And another guy who I thought that's going to shake things up at a program that needs it, the kid Jakari Blackshear from American. Coach Neal has been talking about him all year and into the offseason. I think he did a tremendous job. And a couple of guys that a lot of people don't get a chance to hear, Jordan Canis out of St. Brendan's in Miami, a two-way 2026 kid, which is a lot of people, we don't get a chance to, see a lot of those younger kids, until they're 20, until they're juniors or seniors. And even though a combine doesn't get a chance to spotlight running backs, I thought we had a pretty good one. The Elijah Dwoskin kid out of 2025 running back out of West Broward, and that's the one thing, Dre, that was good for us because we got a chance to highlight a lot of the players who aren't the 5 stars and who aren't the 4 stars, and like Woodley Jean Francois out of St. Brendan's, and Sonoris Moss Jr. Yes. A lot of people don't realize that he's around and doing well at Western High School, and he's a 2025 kid. So as far as that's concerned,
way bigger than Sonoris ever was.
Oh yeah, way heavier, right?
Yeah. Well, he's a play a different position, but
yeah, they do. Well, you know what? But isn't that a good thing when we could see a lot of the, like Moss, and then we saw Hans Ottenot's son, and that's what that can't. That it's a low cost combine that we're running 3 this year, 5 next year. The next one's coming up in Palm Beach, and then we're going to go to Fort Myers with it. But what it really is good, every kid that you saw and every kid that attended got their names out there. And nobody can promise that because, a lot of these people, you know how that is. After those combines, they throw everything into the garbage and move on to the next one. We don't do that. I think that much what kind of makes us different.
Yeah, no, and those are the kids that.
And
really
thank you for coming too, because that's big when when Joe and you and Manny Navarro come out there and support us like that. And got to give props to Channel 10 and people who came out because having a Chris Chambers out there is huge. It's huge for you. Yeah. It's huge for me. It's huge for the parents. But the kids don't really remember him playing, and that's the crazy thing. You and I do when we watched him, and the parents do. But what he adds to the event is somebody who's been there, done that at a high level, and and a lot of the parents are swayed by that and say, "Oh, okay, Chris." And then I got to give a shout out to Laz Suarez from Bleacher, hardworking guy who kind of keeps it all together. So I think we have a real good thing moving forward. Like I said, low cost. Most of these combines are like $200-$300. Ours is $40. So and it gets the kids a lot of exposure.
Yeah. Well, another event that I know we wanted to talk about too, and you were there for this one. The Orange Bowl Showcase, which it's been going on for a few years now. And this is another event that really helps, like you said, those kids. I mean, not the 5-star elites and those are always going to have their attention, but this is another event really tuned in to help a lot of those kids, not only the kids that are under the radar, but even kids with good grades. They emphasize that part of it. How was the event last Saturday?
Oh, 400 kids showed up all the way from Tallahassee and Tampa, Orlando, all the way down to South Miami and Homestead. And as you mentioned, I think one of the big things about it, and we talk all the time, is that every kid there was qualified. I mean, they were ready to go. So what's in this day and age, Andre, of these small college recruiting fairs, in the past, they all made sense to come down, meet, show the film on a, in a setting where there's a lot of small college coaches and the high school coaches come and they sell their kid. Well, things have changed. I mean, you could actually do that in the comforts of your own office from a college, or you're at a high school, and you don't have to, at the expense. What the Orange Bowl has done is they've added an element. They have that type of thing on a Friday night where the coaches come, the college coaches, the high school coaches, and they try to sell their kids. But on Saturday, these college coaches get a chance to see these kids live in a combine setting, which never really has been done before. And our good friend Charles Fishbein and I thought about doing this 10 years ago because you go to those events and you say, okay, this is neat. But the last time any of these college coaches saw these kids was 5 to 6 months ago. And those 5'8", 155-pound kids now are 5'10" and 170 or 180. And it changes the entire recruitability of them. So I think these things are great. They had 35 colleges represented, a lot of local schools. Obviously, it was at St. Thomas University, but the Florida Memorial was there. Head coach Doug Sosha brought his coaching staff from Kaiser. You had a lot of these prep schools, but Weber, Warner from the state of Florida, because these are the type of players that these coaches recruit. Because of the fact that you look at Division II and Division III, they've got to get high academic kids, not Ivy League, but kids who have some grades and want to combine the two. Because as well as I do, a lot of these small colleges, Division II, Division III, NAIA, they're really the town that they're in. So they want not only do well from an athletic standpoint, but they want to do well academically. And that's why they bring in, and, I give props to, coaches like Gene Chu of Ferguson and Gerald Cox from North Miami and Coach Charles McCray from South Broward and Richard Dunbar from Lauderdale and Quentin Short. And I got to mention our guy, Tom Caparelli from Dr. Kraut. They all came out. Rodney Rum from Everglades was there, and our good friend Alex Terry from Miami Beach. They not only brought their kids, but they supported them, and they were there from start to finish and watching their players, and maybe pushing a little bit to the coaches to say, hey, take a look at my kid. My kid's not only a tight end, but he plays, here or there. And you had guys, the kid Aiden Baldwin from Boyd Anderson, who gets no pub, got a lot of looks last week. Patrick Derelis from Deerfield Beach, a defensive back who's been really good in the offseason. He played in the Broward County All-Star game. I thought he was really good. Bradley Merard, a defensive lineman from Cooper City who got kind of, no looks. Michael Kinghorn from South Plantation, big lineman, but he also wanted to come there to show that he could, long snap. The kid had a 4.2 GPA, which kind of is pretty darn good as well. And yet Devin Lamar from Stranahan, a guy that everybody's looking at, and also Jason Boracourt, a wide receiver from Pines Charter. So it was an opportunity for a Daryl Doctor from Palmetto or a Mark Wilder, who was the leading rusher in South Florida and one of the top 5 in the state. For him to come out and also show, there was tons of local kids, Cornelius Cozy from Westminster Christian, Cameron Lee from Somerset South Homestead. So you had a lot of guys, Dre, that a lot of people never really saw. And this is the element. The Division II, the Division III, the NAIA, prep schools. I got to mention that Atlantis, which is a school down here in South Florida, MTI Prep, Stocker McDougal School was also on hand. And because this is the guys that they could recruit and get some money. A lot of these kids are not going to get full scholarships, but if it's going to cost you $29,000, they can probably get you $20,000, which is not bad to pay, for a $9,000 for a college scholarship, especially at a school like those.
No, for sure. That's what they're out there. And those guys that you mentioned and a few others have been out there. They've been at the All-Star games, those events. I've seen them around all throughout this offseason. So they're doing a good job, and hopefully
no doubt
continue to give these kids opportunities. So last thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about, Larry, was and I just thought of this part of it right now. I know we were going to talk a little bit about transfers, but we could be here like 2 more hours talking about that. We don't have the time.
2 more days.
Or 2 more days, maybe. But the coaching carousel has been a little bit interesting, too. That I wanted to end on that. Did I see right? Art Taylor is back in town and coaching at Cooper City, the program that he took to rarefied air once, beating St. Thomas, winning a district title. He's back with the Cowboys.
Yeah, he is. In fact, you have quite a few, as you said, new faces. Nitro Baker goes from Somerset and Pembroke Pines. Now he's at Carroll City, and he's bringing in kids. He didn't come there just to hang out. Kevin Claxton, former University of Wisconsin player, somebody who went to Boyd Anderson and got a college scholarship, is out at Northeast now trying to revive that program. Matt Dixon, who was assistant coach at Columbus and Berlin and Gulliver for years. Now he's taken over the job that Javi Valdez had at Silver Palms in Somerset. Keith Hinesley, who was a coach up in Palm Beach County at Delray, he takes the Douglas job. Tyrus McLeod, former Louisville standout, Baltimore Ravens standout linebacker who went to Nova. He's back and he's going to Nova and trying to turn that program around. And, it's not easy, but they've done it before. And I think that he could tap into a lot of the guys that he went to school with, women and men, now have kids who go to college and high school. So that was huge. Chris Reed comes back, takes South Dade. Hudson did a great job for the time he's there, won state title. It kind of wears thin after a while. Quentin Short, who I think is one of the better coaches in South Florida, goes from Douglas, where he did a really good job. And it wasn't easy for him because he came in the heels of, that tragedy up there, and he really tried to rally that team and try to keep them together. As you mentioned, Art Taylor at Cooper City is huge because of his knowledge and because of what he brings to the community. And if you remember when he was there last time, he kind of rallied around the youth programs, which really has been missing over the last 8 to 10 years there. Patrick Winnan, who's been in a lot of programs. He's been in the European League. He takes over at Westminster Christian.
His alma mater, I remember.
Yeah, his alma mater.
Yeah.
And here's James Collier, who did a great job in the 1 year he was there. Hell, I think he was off to an 8-0 start. Ronnie Thornton. This is, people, as soon as Phil Simpson went to Nebraska and everyone goes, how's Homestead going to stay together? Well, you bring in somebody who's familiar with everybody, and Ronnie's done a tremendous job. And there'll be a new coach named, within the next couple of days at Somerset and Pembroke Pines. I think a lot of people will be really pleased with who they're going to bring aboard as well.
Yeah, is that the only opening left at this point, or is there?
There was rumors that Boyd Anderson might open, that may be open. I haven't heard, and I haven't confirmed that, but that seems like right now Flanagan was taken. I failed to mention that Flanagan was taken as well. Marlon Robinson, who was part of the staff that won a state title, with Samuels and Bush.
With Devin Bush, yep.
Right, so he comes back to the Pines. Brett Hood takes, Brett Hood was the interim coach at Cypress Bay, but now he's the dude.
He's cold, yeah.
Yeah,
we saw him at your camp, and he was talking a little bit. He has a few.
Yeah. So I mean, I know that you probably weren't prepared for the full rundown, but
I wanted it. That's why I brought it up, because I think a lot of people haven't really seen that. Some of the movement. Yeah, we talk so much about transfers, but it's important to see who's guiding some of these programs, because, like you said, some of these that have been in the tank for a while could suddenly revive and get a lot better because they're getting some of these really savvy, good coaches out there.
No doubt. Yeah. And here's Carroll City hiring their second consecutive Northwestern graduate, to be a head coach. In the old days, like Kenny Phillips and I said, that wouldn't fly. But
that was sacrilege. Yeah, that was sacrilege back then.
But look,
now you get who wins.
Yeah, well, look at Central and Northwestern. Roland Smith, arguably one of the most successful coaches of all time, was a Northwestern blue and gold bleed, and he did a pretty damn good job at Central.
I think that's when 15 years ago, that's what kicked the forbidden door open right there.
Yeah.
When they crossed over, that was it.
True.
You could welcome anybody. But well, Larry, thanks like always. We appreciate the insights, the knowledge, and we're glad to see you out there, and we'll bring you on again. I can't believe it. Two more months until high school spring practices start and stuff like that.
Yeah,
we're all less than 2 months really at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's at the end of April, and what we'll do is in our next deal, we'll kind of look at some of the key teams that are really benefiting. Miami Norland has thrust themselves into a top 5 team statewide now. 17 transfers. Miami Central, as always. St. Thomas, always. Chaminade, we were sitting there last year thinking, wow, when they graduate those offensive linemen, well, guess who restocked that offensive line?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they always do. Well, thanks again, Larry. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, like always, for being a guest on Titletown.
Thank you, Andre.
Always good talking to Larry, the fountain of information and insights, like always. I can't wait. We're under 2 months away now from the actual spring practices starting for the high school football scene. A lot of changes, but some of the regulars are going to remain the same. It should be fun. We'll have Larry on again at some point before that. Before we get to our state preview for boys basketball, a few shout outs here. Girls basketball isn't the only sport that had state champions crowned last week. Boys soccer and girls soccer did as well. A few of the stars there. Cosme Salas, who had a hat trick back in the regional round, captain impressive postseason. He had a goal and a free kick and an assist as Gulliver won their 8th state championship in boys soccer and first overall since 2020. We mentioned Christina Godfrey before. She's on there as one of our players of the week. And then we're going to talk a little bit about these guys coming up. Dante Allen for Riviera Prep rallied the troops, 17 points, 15 of them in the second half to get Riviera Prep to state. Javi Rossell has been at the heart of a collective effort at Belen Jesuit as they broke through and got their first chance to go to the state Final Four by beating Norland. And as spring season is underway, so for softball, Somerset Silver Palms could be one of the teams to beat once again this year. Maybe they'll break through this season. If they do, Eden Playa is their top pitcher. Already had a one-hitter striking out 5 to beat St. Brendan in a battle of 2 of the best softball teams. And then on the Broward side, we mentioned Karina Gordon, but Nyla McFadden, 42 points, 20 rebounds combined in those 2 comfortable wins for St. Thomas to win their 3rd state championship in a row. American Heritage, similar to Gulliver, also won their 8th championship thanks to Juan Otero, had a hat trick in the final 3-1 victory over Naples, their first title since 2019. Heritage and Gulliver both at 8 state titles lead all South Florida teams in boys soccer as far as state titles go. And then wrestling has had a couple of standouts. Giovanni Solis for Somerset improved to 46-3 on the year. Somerset won the region title, and expect them to be one of the teams that should compete for at least a top 5 spot this weekend. The state wrestling championships are happening in Kissimmee. And also Maxino Mondesir at 220 pounds won a regional title as Miramar continued their breakthrough season with a top 4 finish in Class 2A in the region. And looking ahead to the spring as well, North Broward Prep in baseball is already at it. Nick Course went 4 for 7 with 6 RBI as they are off. The Eagles are off to a 3-0 start. The Eagles are 2-time defending state champions. They already beat Delray Heritage, Monsignor Pace, and the brand new ABF Academy this past week. So lots of action all around town. But let's go back to the hard court here in Lakeland and talk a little bit about the boys tournament. So yeah, we'll start with Sagemont and talking about boys basketball this week up in Lakeland. We have 5 teams up at state, 4 from Dade, but I'm thinking let's start with the Broward representative, and that's the Sagemont Lions, who have had some 2 state champions. They've had 2 state champions in the past and a lot of talent that's come out of there, including a couple of NBA guys in the past. This year, kind of similar to Miami Country Day, where they had to make up for an injury to a key player. They were 9-0, looked like they were confident to make a deep playoff run, and then senior Cameron Gibson went down with a torn ACL. That had to change everything, but they've had a collective effort over there that has been able to kind of persevere, battle through it, and get back to the state Final Four as they expected to. They beat True North the other day in the regional semifinal round. We're able to follow it up with another victory over Dade Christian. Some of their top players include Tynan Becker, Danelius Kasparis, who had 13 points in that game, Max Martinez. This Sagemont team could be, they're playing North Florida Educational in the 2A round in the semifinals, but they hit threes. They have a solid inside game, a little bit of balance. I mean, this could be one of those teams that maybe surprises. I don't know. They look like they have a tough bracket, but you never know. In 2A, I know Orlando Christian Prep is always an obstacle, but yeah, you've seen those teams before. You saw Sagemont last year.
Yeah, they played last year. They lost to OCP in the title game last year. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting team where they lose Adrian Cruz, who last year was so central to everything they did. He was, he was the point guard and in the old school sense, where he had the ball in his hand on every possession, was getting to the rim and kicking out, all that kind of stuff. But they had good role players. Cameron Gibson was one of those guys who was kind of their running mate for him in the backcourt. Tynan Becker was, like a 2A, 3-and-D type of guy. And all those guys have emerged. They're well coached. They're always played very, just solid basketball, hit their shots right, move the ball well. OCP is a tough hill to climb, but they're battle tested at this point, right? They got there last year, so I'm not counting them out by any stretch.
No, definitely, and I think they'll have a shot for sure. They play on Wednesday. They start on the first day of the tournament at 4:00 in their semifinal game, and if they win, kind of similar to Country Day. I mean, I guess we got to find out. Are they going to stay for a few days? And because they play that same bracket, they play on Saturday at 10 a.m. if they do get to the final. So interesting how in this one class, this team needs to do either a long stay in Lakeland or go and come back, where the others can kind of just stick around for a day or two. But another team that made it, and I know had been working towards this goal. They had been blocked by Calvary Christian when Calvary Christian was there last year in the regional final. But with Calvary Christian gone, they decided to play independent this year. The Matter Lakes Bears, the window opened up, and I think, and they pretty much, even if Calvary had been there, this team was pretty talented. Christian Reed, Anthony Knowles, a combined effort that they've had to get there this year under coach Dylan Estock, and they got it done. Finally broke through. Here's a clip which comes courtesy of Matter Lakes has their own broadcast team, which has been covering kind of similar to the way Columbus and a few other schools do. They've been covering, they broadcast all their home games. Here's the call when they clinched it and finally broke through the state.
Team from Matter Lakes Academy has advanced to the state tournament. And that statement is only true for the next second or so. It's over. The Matter Lakes Academy Bears are regional champions, and they will advance to the state tournament for the first time in program history. Dylan Estock, you did it. The Bears are champions. The Bears are regional champions. And celebrations are taking place on the floor. They've done it. What a magnificent season. And it's not over yet. They're 26-3. They're 12-0 at home. The Bears get to hoist another trophy and celebrate this one. Look out, Florida. The Matter Lakes Academy Bears have arrived.
And yes, they have. And a lot of enthusiasm there. I mean, Luis Perez, Alejandro Gonzalez, and Albert Saez is the crew for Matter Lakes. Their AD asked me to give them a shout out, and we appreciate them sending us that clip the other night. We weren't able to be there in person, but congrats to them. We'll be there. They start on Thursday in a semifinal up in against trying to remember who the opponent is. But while we do that, junior Christian Reed has been one of the forces for them all season long. But like I said before, balanced effort. They had 11 points each from him. Anthony Knowles, another kid that kind of goes under the radar, but I know Coach Shaw, who was on the show earlier this year, talked a little bit about him. A guard, Michael Bradley, who's going to Barry University. So this is a balanced group that might just have all the ingredients to win it all. And I think they're ranked pretty high. They're the top seed in Class 4A, David.
Yeah, it's a tough little bracket. Providence is good, who they could potentially play in the title game. Tampa Catholic in the sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bracket. Gibbs, yeah, they've definitely got
Gibbs. Yeah,
they got Gibbs. That is I mean, they look like they're probably the favorite in there. And we're going to talk about Belen in a little bit here. It's fun to see. It kind of feels like the teams that have been knocking on the door, right? Like, obviously, Calvary was kind of an insurmountable task for them to overcome with the way that, they went independent to play a national schedule this year, right? They're playing the IMGs and the Montfords of the world. But it's cool to see these teams that have been some of the best teams in South Florida for the last, 5 years or so, finally get their moment to get to the state title game. And I mean, like you said, they're the top seed there. They're probably the favorite to come back with the state championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those groups that's fun to watch. I got a chance to see them against Riviera Prep, who's also in the tournament. That's who we're going to talk about.
Yeah, sorry, that was the bracket I was running through.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And
which is a loaded bracket. That's a loaded Final Four.
Yeah. It is. We're definitely we'll talk about that one now. But going back real quick to the Bears, they young program, but has progressed little by little to get to this point. They play Gibbs in that round, and then could end up facing Jacksonville Ribault. I know Ribault used to be known for their girls team winning all those championships, but their boys have come along. So not easy, especially the first year you go to Lakeland. There's always a little bit of that, like we talked about the shooting before, but also just the little added pressure of it's the first time at state. So we'll see how Matter Lakes responds. But one of a few of these teams that is the top seed going in. So like you said, finally getting their chance, but a lot of South Florida teams that really are at the top and considered favorites. And switching to those
Bulldogs happens sometimes, right? Because we got good teams down here. So a lot of times maybe two of the four best teams in their region have to play, or in their classification have to play in the region championship.
Yeah, I mean, that's the good side of seeding them too, because in the past it was kind of just like bracketing and however you had it arranged, but now you get to see truly who the top teams are.
Yeah.
And that top team in 3A going in, even though it is a tough bracket, it is a tough Final Four, like you said, but Riviera Prep, and that the architect of that is Dante Allen at the top, which is the son of Heat assistant coach, former Heat player Malik Allen. If you haven't seen it, Anthony Chang and I collaborated on a little father-son piece that's on Herald.com. A nice story. Anthony mostly wrote it because he talked to Malik. That this kid, one of the most dynamic sophomores out there. He's already got D1 offers from Miami, FSU, UConn, a few different places, and only as a sophomore. Kid's averaging over 20 points, but he's versatile. Can rebound, run the floor. He's a good distributor, and he's at the heart of this effort for Riviera Prep. Their coach Tony Shabazz. That you got the chance to see them last year. That was a heartbreaker. I mean, 1 point loss to Florida High last year in the final. Yeah. This team though has been able to reload. I know they lost one of the Esteban. I can't remember his last name. He was Uberis. He was the one that was like their star last year. But Riviera, to their credit, they reloaded, and now here they are. They're back.
Yeah, and Allen was, a huge part of, Uberis was the guy for them, but he was clearly kind of the number two guy, and just as a the plan all along, right, was that by now he would be ascendant to, he was always one of the best players in South Florida, but now gets to kind of run the show by himself. And he's risen to that challenge. He's a guy who's, a bigger guard, right? He handles the ball a lot for them, but defends at a really high level and, big enough to rebound, good playmaker. So he's one of the most fun guys to watch in South Florida. That sophomore class between him and the Boozer twins down here in South Florida right now is pretty loaded. It's about as, sometimes we have these good groups, and like what the Thompson twins would have been the same way, and they end up going elsewhere, playing at Montford or up at overtime or something. But that group of sophomores we have here in South Florida right now is really, really good. And Allen obviously gets overshadowed a little bit by Cameron Boozer, who's the number one player in that class and already getting that hype as like potential future number one pick. But he's he's on that same Power 5 level. You just look at the offers he has already.
Yeah, it's Michigan, Memphis, Villanova, Florida, FSU, Miami. I mentioned UConn, but I think I had the wrong Big East team. It was Villanova, but still.
Yeah, where his dad played, I believe, right? Didn't Malik play at Villanova?
He's going to keep bringing them in. He's going to keep bringing them in. Only a sophomore and fun kid to watch. And Malik himself, he couldn't go the other day because the Heat were playing, but he's going to, if they get to the championship, he told Anthony he's going to pull a mission. He's going to drive down. He's going to drive up and then drive back down for the Heat game because of the fact that if Riviera does make it, they get that early morning slot,
right?
10 a.m. Yeah, they to play there. So actually, Sagemont plays on Friday, but still would have to stay an extra day. Yeah. So in that scenario, but so
I remember when last time U School was in the title game, they had the Howard brothers, Jet and Jace, who are both now at Michigan. I remember that was when Jawan was still coaching the Heat, and he made the trip up for one of their championship games. So
the stars come out for this thing. I remember when Alonzo Mourning's kid was at Ransom, he was there with his wife. Alonzo and Tracy were both there watching him. I mean, you see, I've seen Rick Pitino scouting at this thing before. It's pretty serious. So it's a fun time. The arena gets full and it's a great tournament. But moving on to Class 5A, and now here's where the Cinderella team of this entire South Florida scene, the Belen Jesuit Wolverines, where they expected to be good, maybe not this good. Even Chachi Rodriguez, their coach, who we know very well, the only Dade coach to ever win a state title at two different schools. He did it at my now defunct alma mater, Champagnat, and then he did it at Coral Reef. But he hadn't been to state. It'd been 14 years. Yeah. And now he becomes the first coach to go to the state tournament with three different schools, as now he's taken Belen for the first time. Belen, a long time. We know it's one of the oldest schools in Miami, but had never done this before. Yeah. They've been knocking on the door, regional semi after regional semi for years.
They're the kind of school that always has their seniors, always like an all-county type player, right? They just develop well, and now see them get through is pretty cool, and they got a really good shot. And you look at the way this bracket is broken for them, they got a really good shot to bring it home.
Yeah, they do, and they're the top seed, which is the interesting part too, because considered an underdog at the beginning. I mean, really, them and Norland in the regional final, that was the matchup where you saw basically the top two teams, the top two ranked teams in the state, but Belen was able to do it. They basically run, they pressure. They keep it up tempo the whole game, and basically, like Chachi put it, they kept Norland on skates the whole night, trying to keep up. And Norland, the taller team, maybe on paper, just in terms of raw talent, the more talented team, but it didn't matter, and that's what they do. Javi Russell, like we said before, at the heart of that. Kevin Garcia, a few different guys there, and Bryce Fitzgerald, who you've heard of on the football side. Yeah, one of the top sophomores. He's starting to get pretty good at basketball too. Two-way athlete there. Let's take a look real quick before we keep talking about the Wolverines. Here's a shot of the final seconds as bedlam ensued at the Belen gym. And there you go. And the Wolverines, as we were talking about before, they're going to play Orlando Jones, a team they already beat earlier this year. So this does set up in a good way for them. If they do get past them once again, they get either St. Petersburg or Daytona Mainland, who you saw on the girls' side last week. But the Wolverines, if they play that style, I think they can match up with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, they're that's a experienced group. But St. Petersburg has been there a lot that they're matching up against. But yeah, I mean, when you've been that good for that long, and like you said, it's you wonder about the pressure, right? The gyms, all the stuff we talk about for a first-time team going there. But I think they've won 13 in a row. They tested themselves early, right? You look at they've only got a handful of losses in there to Riviera Prep, like a bunch of teams who are also there in Lakeland. So yeah, they tested themselves well, and we'll see if it pays off.
Yeah, and they're one of those teams that I don't want to say it will happen, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Is they depend a lot on the 3-point shooting too. They buried 9 threes against Norland, and that Belen gym is, it's a high school gym. It's not super big. It's that whole depth perception thing could come into play as well for them. Moving on now to Class 7A, and this last but not least, and I'm telling you, if this happens, if they both get to the finals, this could be like watching Duke and Carolina play in the same place in the same day, like it happens in the ACC tournament, because Belen would play at 3:00 on Saturday, and they're going to fill that gym with all their fans. But then there's a little window in between, and then here comes their arch nemesis, who will also fill that gym with all of their fans, and that's Columbus. Big bad, top 10 nationally ranked team. Columbus comes in with the Boozer twins and a pretty good cast around them. I mean, they lost to Palmetto in the district final, but I don't think they're screwing around anymore. I think that was the wake-up call they needed. They've flattened Deerfield 71-43 in the regional final, and they're playing Orlando Colonial. But to me, it doesn't really matter who they're playing. This team is on a mission to get this done once again.
Yeah, I mean, they're the clear favorite. I guess Oak Ridge, they could potentially play in the title game. That's another, not quite what they used to be, but a school that has, a lot of history as well. But I mean, that team is stacked, and obviously we can talk all about the Boozers because, and it's deserved, right? Like that, Hammond is the number 1 recruit in the country. He was our overall athlete of the year in Dade County last year. Caden is obviously overshadowed a little bit by his brother, but still a fantastic player. But they're, like you said, their supporting cast is really good. I love Benny Fragella. The sharpshooter's already got offers, only a sophomore. They're Devon Best, right? They've just got good players all across the board. I think they're very well coached too. But yeah, I mean that they're the clear favorite. I remember last year they got a scare in the title. It was a low scoring title game. I think it's Dr. Phillips, and Cam was in foul trouble, but all those other guys showed up when they needed it too. Caden Boozer hit free throws at the end. So it'll be tough. Winter Haven's another team really highly ranked in the state. So it's a tough group, but considering how good that team was last year and they're even better this year, I think it's hard to pick against them.
Yeah, and like you said, Caden Boozer as well, one of the top players in that sophomore class in the nation as well, right there with Cameron. But that supporting cast, like you said, Malik Abdullahi is a D1 prospect. Garen Best isn't getting offers yet, but they're hoping because the kid's had a tremendous year and he's a big compliment there. Kevin Noriega too, off the bench, a good shooter.
I think I called him Devon Best, who was the wide receiver, but yes, Garen Best.
No, not not the wide receiver, but yeah, no, Garen's doing great for the Explorers as well. And they're that's the thing. They're so deep and talented that even if one of the Boozers wasn't there, they could still beat you with everybody else.
They're really good. Yeah, exactly.
They're that deep. And then the region too, like you were talking about some of the competition out at state, the top 2 teams after that, Olympia and Lake Worth, were both eliminated on the way there. So theoretically, this field got even more manageable for them.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and again, like you said, they lost to Palmetto and have just
took off after that.
Then. Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it feels like kind of the wake up call because they beat up on Palmetto. Palmetto's a really good team, obviously. If they weren't stuck in Columbus's region, like we'd probably be talking more about them going this week. But they've beaten the brakes off pretty much everyone this year, including Palmetto some other times that they've played them. So it felt like a wake up call now. Got all business when they get up to Lakeland.
And Palmetto losing to Deerfield in the semi. If not, I think that would have been a heck of a regional final if they had gotten a shot at them again. But didn't happen, and now it's the Explorers' time in Lakeland to try and win their second in a row. Well, that's our state basketball preview, and that's our episode. We appreciate everybody for watching. Remember where to check us out, MiamiHerald.com. And if you want as a podcast, it's available on Spotify, iTunes, and several other platforms. So for David Wilson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for watching as always. And everybody take care. We hope you enjoy state championship basketball season, football around the corner. We'll see you soon.